Hey, man.
The stuff I can hear is really rough. What's up, buddy? How you feeling?
I feel great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last week you weren't.
Last week I tested positive.
Uh-huh.
Despite being vaxxed, I'm double vaxxed.
Are you boosted?
I was going to get boosted this week.
See?
Was my plan.
I'm boosted and healthy.
Yeah, I'm not. I wasn't.
I'm like triple boosted.
I'm negative
I
now.
kept going to Hy-Vee and I was just like, load me up. I have 17 doses.
They were like, sir, we can't keep doing this. And you were like, do it.
I was like, I'm sorry. What? I've never been here before. And they were like, we know it's you, man. They were like, you didn't do anything about your physical appearance. You just came in and tried to do different accents. Why I oughta. I'll tell you what, okay? Where I'm from, yeah, we know where you're from, man. We've seen you in here a lot.
We've seen it. We know.
It's pretty bonkers to me that for 2 years, we've done this whole coronavirus stuff, and now you can do you ever think about life-saving medicine?
Yeah.
And
no,
how? Okay, great. So in the 1800s, people would die of a toothache. Okay, they would be my tooth hurts, right? They die, and now dentists will just pull stuff out, and I just think it's crazy that I can go to Hy-Vee, a grocery store, and get the vaccine for this pandemic.
Yeah.
Anyway,
free.
that's bonkers to me.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point.
Yeah,
That's a
just
pretty good
a
point.
vaccine and not skim milk. Anything but, honestly. So you're in a hazmat suit because you had COVID last week.
Jaron's career, he travels a lot, so he couldn't afford to get.
I genuinely can't
The
afford to
virus.
test positive.
So I'm doing this for him.
And is it reflecting off of his mask, his screen? Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, so if you're listening,
If you're watching, his mask is getting more and more fogged up. This is the worst idea we've ever had.
yeah, the audio experience is probably going to be pretty rough for this episode.
Yeah, and it's
But
worth
the video
it because
experience has got to be hilarious.
I am not going to get COVID, is what I'm saying. So if you're listening to this and you're like, this sucks, well, so do I, because my lungs are working properly after this.
Well, anyways, roll the title sequence.
Oh, we did that a long time ago.
It's so hard to breathe in this
You
thing.
can take it off. Podcast.
Where this theory
Who is they?
comes from.
Who is they? That's why Tim's house is boring.
Jesus built that.
Slide through the doors to get on the trains. Things I learned last night.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we're in the episode now. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah. Have you ever heard of the Tartarian Empire?
It sounds made up.
I think it is.
Tartarian?
Yeah.
Tartarian.
Bro, I don't know if I can. You're going to hate this.
Is it aliens?
It's not aliens, but it might as well be. You are just gonna.
Is it okay? Let's just the Tartarian Empire.
The Tartarian Empire.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not gonna like.
Sounds like a work of fiction.
Yeah, it does actually, because it probably is. So here's the idea.
You can't make statements like that, by the way. Our Valiant Thor episode has actually taken over comments on the Bob Lazar. So we had Bob Lazar. Everyone hated us, right?
Yeah.
And then now we have
Bob Lazar. I bought. You didn't.
Yeah,
was
you
all
believe
about
Bob Lazar. Right. Yeah. Valiant Thor, neither of us did, and I think that's why the comments are worse.
They're really people.
So
hate
are we
us
going to
for-
get that kind of stuff? Are there people who are really in on the Tartarian Empire?
Yeah. So the Tartarian Empire is this relatively new theory from 2016 about that's when it seems like it
you
started to
can't
show
have
up.
anything in the 2016 and being like Tartarian. No, that's something stupid people in the 1930s believed in. You can't come out after social media exists and be like the Tartarian Empire. No, hard pass.
Yeah, that's fair. So basically, there's like 3, maybe 4 layers of the Tartarian Empire theory. So basically, here's what we'll do. We'll do kind of the broad overview, and then we'll go down the layers of the onion for the belief system. It's so hard to breathe in this thing.
You can take it off. Listen, guys, Tim got too hot and uncomfortable, so now he's going to put me at risk. It
was really hard to breathe. And here's the thing, I have to talk a lot.
I know, it was a really fun bit, but it looked like you were suffocating. And the thing was fogging up too much, and I was really worried that the last thing I was ever going to see of you is like a pale little outline in a foggy little thing as you just fade away.
Just fade into the
hazmat
suit.
That I would have let you die for this bit. I would have let you die for this bit. I'm glad ultimately that you took it off, but like...
Oh man, it was a struggle for a minute there. I was like, oh God, I've got a lot to cover and I can't breathe.
So we were saying that the Tartarian
Empire. So there's really 4 layers to this.
And we're going to go through the layers.
We're going to go through the layers.
When did it start?
Here's a brief idea. So in about 2016, this theory came out that there was this empire that predated our civilization that has been... not predated our civilization. Well, maybe predated, depending on what layer of the onion you're at. But but basically, it was this really advanced empire that we've buried in history. We don't want anyone to know about it for some reason.
Oh, it's a cover up.
Yeah, it's a cover up.
The theory is a cover up.
Yeah, and they're They're like support for this, where this theory comes from Tartarian believers, Tartarian truthers, I guess.
Where do they gather?
Reddit.
Yeah. So you're going to tell me about a theory on Reddit that comes out in 2016.
Yeah, because I just want you to... Okay, so there's 2 things this has birthed from. So there was... this community in Northern Asia, known in history as either Tartaria or the Tartars, which sounds like something you would call someone to make fun of them.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's the Tartars.
Yeah.
But this is like the Mongolian invader, like the Hun. Like this group.
How do you think the Mongolians... the Hun, the Viking, warriors would have felt knowing that their legacy is the Benihana grill kind of things. Like if they showed up in our world, we would be like, yes. We would just hand them a bowl of raw ingredients and be like, cook those boys together.
Yeah, take those somewhere. Take those to that guy. He'll flip them around and make some stuff.
Yeah, and if I ring this gong, you all got to go, ooh, hot. Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know if they would love it, but at the same time, it is kind of an empire, probably further spanning than they ever were. So
who hot?
Well, not who hot. That's a local version.
Who hot is?
But Benihana.
Who hot's not a local? Is it? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure who hot's the Springfield local version of Benihana.
Really?
Yeah.
No, Benihana is like a steakhouse. Like that's not even what I meant. Benihana is like they cook in front of you.
Yeah. Anyways.
But I'm talking Mongolian grill. So that's a term, right? Who hot's the brand? Yeah. But a Mongolian grill is where you just get your raw ingredients and you go, hey, please cook these together on your little
chop them up
on your little black
make a show out of it.
Circle grill. So put the onion on fire. Make it a volcano.
Turn it into a volcano. So the Tartars, like you can see them in history. There are some examples of flags of this Tartaria group, but from all traditional history, it's this very fringe group that really kind of like the Vikings, where it's like we've taken this big group of random tribes.
Vikings were...
Well, no, it's the same concept where it's like here's a bunch of different tribes that go around and invade and try to conquer people.
They are Vikings, but they weren't one thing.
They weren't one thing. No, it's the same thing with Tartarian history. Is the Tartarians were this massive group of Mongolian invader type peoples that functioned,
but they weren't connected to each other. That we didn't think of.
Not in traditional history.
Sure, I'll let you away with that.
But according to the Tartarian truthers.
The Tartruthers.
Yeah, that is the pieces of we have some history of them, of the Tartaria group. And
what we're missing is the glue that holds them together.
Yeah, the modern historians are hiding the truth from us.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot there's people in charge who are like gatekeeping information. There always is in conspiracy theories. There's always some mystery person who like just doesn't like, they don't want you to know about it.
Want you to Well, they don't want you to know.
I mean, they're letting you talk about it on reddit.com. So it seems like they're fine with whatever stupid theories you've got.
So there's that side of it.
You know what happens to people who actually figure it out? They get murdered. All right. So if you're putting theories out online and you're just going out,
and you're just alive,
and you're like, the rest of your day is spent playing video games and having your mom make fish sticks, like you probably don't got it right.
You're probably wrong. Yeah. That's
now, if you get murdered, you're going to know for sure.
Yeah. You'll know, hey, I was right. You better get that up on Reddit before.
And if you do get murdered, do you know where you'd go tonight? He's doing like a Baptist altar call. Anyway.
Okay, so they took that Tartaria history.
Yeah, and they tried to put it together. They expanded it.
But then they also took really two architectural styles. One of called Beaux-arts.
Okay.
And then another architecture called Second Empire architecture style, which I actually have some pictures to show you.
Please do, yes.
Here is this style. So we've seen this. It's pretty common. Basically, it's taking like the columns and the domes.
So like what, honestly, what most government buildings kind of look like.
Yeah.
This is the Beaux-arts?
Yeah, this is Beaux-arts.
This is Beaux-arts, what we're looking at right now?
This is actually Second Temple. Here's Beaux-arts. Here's Second Temple. It's very similar.
Okay.
The only difference for Second Temple or Second Empire, I keep saying Temple, Second Empire is that it's a little bit more obnoxious. Like
very highly decorated.
Yeah, like a bunch of random, like just kind of gaudy stuff to be like, hey, we're rich. Here's another big example of it. This is the Singer Building in New York. This was the tallest building in the world in like 1907 or something.
How many stories is it?
It was 27. They actually tore the building down in the 60s.
My apartment is taller than this thing.
No, it's not.
Yeah. I think your house is taller than this thing.
Really cool building. I wish that they left it up.
Why they tear it down?
Well, a couple reasons. Singer.
I know why.
Owned it. Yeah. That's the.
They're trying to cover up the Tartar. Is it really?
That's the conspiracy.
Shut
we'll get to that in a second.
All right, whatever.
But they tore it. The reason they tore it down is because Singer, the like sewing company, this was their headquarters.
Okay. I thought you kept saying singular, like the old phone company. I was like, really?
Phone company.
I didn't know they were involved.
They were involved. Yeah. So they built it in 1905 for their headquarters. The problem was they wanted to build this. They wanted it to be the tallest building in the world, and so they built it to be that. And the architect who built it, this was early in tall building history. And so they built it really thin. That tower part's pretty thin. So it was impractical. There wasn't a lot of space in every floor. Yeah. And so they outgrew it really quickly. So they moved out.
Every floor has one office?
I think they've got more than one, but it's not many. Every floor is pretty small. And then they outgrew it pretty quick and they moved out. And then the city was like, they sold it. And the people who sold it were like, hey, we want to build something else here. And so they just demolished it. That was in the 60s. And they built something in this place.
Yeah. But in the 60s is when the government was doing sketchy stuff.
It's true. It's true. So what
maybe I'm a Tartarian believer.
Tartarian
based solely on this building.
We'll say you see architecture style like this, and then almost immediately after, which you can kind of see, really, I guess you can't, like in that left corner, that brick building on the left.
Yeah.
Immediately after this style was popular. So this style was popular late 18th century, pretty much through the whole 19th century, early 20th century.
Sure.
Immediately after that, it became what's the word? I think it's called brutalist, where it's literally just like concrete and windows and doors, no design. Like just get this building.
And that's actually how architects talked in the 1900s. They were like brick, concrete, doors, windows. Like, but we didn't teach architects English.
The idea in that era was
it
was the peak of the Industrial Revolution.
We said your brain is for nothing, but we didn't teach them how to communicate. We just said your brain's for nothing but building buildings.
But building buildings.
Right? And so we gave them like little Legos when they were kids. And then like instead of teaching them any kind of language, no matter what, we just said building.
Building. Brick. Concrete.
Windows. Brick. And then they show up. Can you imagine if like that's how the society worked? Is that you just had to like
You only knew the words for your job.
yeah. Wouldn't that be weird?
Podcast, audio, hazmat.
Microphone. And then what do you do on your podcast then? It's just podcast. You can't say anything. You can't talk about anything. You have to bring someone else on and be like, podcast. And they go, brick. Brick podcast. It's for architects.
It's an
And then they listen to it and they go, window. You know? That's what I'm saying. If we got annihilated back to being cavemen, this is how we would talk.
So,
and then the person who comes up with the word we make them the king of the world. We just go, big building, the guy.
the guy. I hate this bit so much. Alex does too.
Yeah, but you know who doesn't? Our
Architects.
Patreon supporters. Architects love our podcast.
Architects hate him.
Architects hate him. Podcasters fear him. Tuesday. That's right. That's when new episodes drop on Patreon. Patreon's a way to get early access to episodes and other content and exclusive merchandise. And we're not going to stop there because we got a private Discord with our hosts and producers in it for less than 17 cents a day. That's right. That's $5 a month. You too can be a Patreon supporter and not hear advertisements in this freaking podcast anymore. Text TILLN to 66866. Otherwise, I'll come to your house. I will find you. I will destroy everything that's good in your life until we're the only thing left. Anyway, here's another advertisement.
Anyways, let's talk about Tartaria. So the Tartarian truthers will say, so this building
is a
style,
symbol.
What they say is like, there's no way we went from building beautiful buildings like this to those just concrete blocks.
Really?
They're like, there's no way. There's no way.
You don't think that the people building buildings saw the numbers and were like, yeah, it's probably easier just to make a rectangle.
Yeah. Well, so what they say is that there was a society before that was more technologically advanced than we were when we started building our blocks. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't know how to do that stuff.
We didn't know how to make buildings are like immaculate.
That look like that. Yeah, this was outside of our technological abilities.
So they believe that the capital and like the government buildings that do look like this were built by this advanced society of Tartarians.
They're remnants of the Tartarian Empire.
And then something happens in the 1900s where all of us do get wiped down to cavemen and we just go Windows bricks.
Well, yeah, sort of. So it's more like, because what they say is, and it's true,
it is remnants.
This architecture style was popular when it was a worldwide society. So it got popular everywhere.
But I'm saying that the reason they build buildings the way they do is that they go, this would cost 3 times more to make it pretty.
Oh yeah, that's exactly why.
But there's other people go, but that means they're hiding something.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, no, I think it just means that they're more poor than they're telling you.
I mean, maybe.
That's why Tim's house is boring. I don't know. I wish Tartarians lived here. Maybe we'd have some paintings on the wall.
Yeah, my neighbor's house is really nice, and I'm positive that it's a relic
absolutely
from an ancient society.
sure that he is a 400-year-old vampire.
But the Tartarian truthers say, "Oh, these are all over the world, and this was an ancient empire that has gone extinct, and it's like the pyramids. Like these are leftovers from their society." That we have repurposed to use as our buildings.
Do they think that the founding fathers just, they're like, yeah, they're called the founding fathers because they found those buildings.
Well, that's the thing is they say like Washington, like that was a capital city of the society because there's so much of that architecture in Washington, D.C. And what's really interesting is they'll talk about
Jefferson City, Missouri, just happened to also
be a capital city. So anyways, so the idea is that in the early 19th or the early 20th century.
Yeah, the 1900s.
The people, the power people who tried to hide it,
got rid of the Tartarians.
They went on this campaign to destroy evidence of the Tartarian.
Is this based solely on architects? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I guess, like, is the only thing that they're more advanced in is they can make buildings look better?
Yeah, they make pretty buildings.
Do they have other theories on what else they contributed? Or was it just like the government didn't like how pretty these buildings were? So they were like, you know what? You're out of here.
Well, the government didn't like that society. That society got wiped out and the opinions range, but pretty much war. And then the government was like, we need to remove the evidence of them from existence. So the early 20th century, the world wars was a campaign to blow up all these buildings. That's why they went on all these bombing runs for the first time in civilized populated areas. They were trying to destroy these buildings. That and the World's Fairs. Are you familiar with the World's Fairs? Basically Epcot, but all over the place.
Oh my gosh.
So this is a World's Fair. This is the Chicago World's Fair. I want to say in like
no way.
The late 1800s, like 1893, something like that. So here's what's really interesting about the World's Fair is they would pick this giant plot of empty land.
And they would build this.
Yeah, every year, or it was like every 4 or 5 years, kind of like the Olympics. It was in a new city somewhere in the world. And then everyone would travel, and it'd be similar to the idea for Epcot is everybody in the world would come show their biggest achievements. So there'd be art, there'd be technology, there'd be war stuff. The Ferris wheel was...
now everyone does it on Instagram, but your achievements are garbage. Like they're just like, look at this meal I made. And you're like, dude, that doesn't look anything like what I can get at Olive Garden.
Yeah,
all right?
Yeah, exactly. The Ferris wheel was actually introduced here, and it was... I can't remember how big it was, the first one that they did here, but it's way bigger than it's like the Las Vegas Ferris wheel. Like it was massive. It was the first time it ever happened. And that was because they opened the Eiffel Tower and America was like, we need someone to do something cooler.
And they're like, what if the tower spun?
Ferris Bueller was like, I got an idea.
Hit us with it, Ferris.
And then he made the wheel thing. But here's what's crazy about this is, and this is kind of hard to believe, but supposedly these are all temporary structures that they would build for this big event. These are made of like hay and clay that they just like push together. So that way after the fair, they could just knock it all over.
Well, I guess this is a drawing. Like they could have made it look better in the drawing. It could have looked. This is not a picture. This is a painting. So, I mean, they really could have taken some artistic liberty here.
But I will say, all the world's fairs, the records we have of them, it's that art style, like that architecture style.
Okay.
And afterwards, after World's Fair, they'd tear them down. So Tartarians, believers, say that the World's Fair were the last big expo, and it gave them an excuse to be like, oh, this is all, we just built this, and now we're going to tear it down afterwards. It's temporary. And so it was just an excuse to throw a big party and then afterwards tear it down and have no evidence that it was there. So these were the capital cities.
Oh, so Tartarians believe that it wasn't like hay and clay and all that stuff. This was the Tartarians'
and this was
architecture. And then they were like, hey, look what we built for the World Fair.
Yeah.
And someone was like, actually, I've seen that thing for like 20 years. And they're like, yeah, cool. And then like that person just drowns in this little pool out there mysteriously.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they tear it down. And they're like, World's Fair is over.
Yeah. And then
the same thing happened to Come and Go in my town, the gas station. It'd been there for a long time, and then they came in. They're like,
a bunch of
car making
showed
days.
up.
Look at this. And there's a Ferris wheel out there, and they just leveled it. And they were like, yeah, we built that gas station for this. And we're like, actually,
you know what would make this carnival better? A gas station, a Come and Go.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Come and Goes are evidence of Tartar.
Look at the architecture. Look at the architecture.
The last bit of evidence that they have for this is what they call the mud flood hypothesis.
Okay.
And so the theory is that there was an ancient mud flood, and depending on what layer of the onion, this mud flood could have happened only 100 years ago, but it also could have happened thousands of years ago. But the idea is it was this worldwide flood of mud that just kind of buried everything a little bit, like just a few feet. And their evidence is that a lot of these Beaux-arts, art style, architecture style buildings have these features that look like they were partially buried. Like it looks like when you look at it, you're like, oh, that was built, like the ground level is halfway buried in this shot. And there's a lot of these where there actually is a lot of that buildings from that era that have since been dug out, and it does look like there's another layer that has been buried. Like the first floor was buried, or at least partially buried.
Yeah, but that exists downtown in Kansas City.
Yeah, because the mud flood.
No, it's just the street coming up from the riverbank.
So here's
they're saying the building was definitely there first. There's no way they figured out how to make a level building on a crooked street. Is that what they're saying?
This is
built on a hill. I don't know. This building was there.
Maybe this isn't the best example because there is that natural hill.
But there obvious, though.
There are other buildings where it's a flat surface, so it's not on a hill. It's flat and it's just partially buried like this. But the real reason for that is when this architecture style was popular, lighting wasn't a thing, and so you needed windows. So there was dugout windows we have in like a lot of modern houses today. Still, there's dugout windows and full windows in there, and often dugout doors that you would walk down to get into the cellar to provide natural light. And so obviously, the whole foundation was made of the same construction material. So it looks, if you dug it out of the ground, it looks like, oh man, they buried, or this got buried in some mud flood. But there is a real pretty logical explanation for it.
Okay, so which layer are we in right now? Walk me through what each layer believes.
So this is the overarching proof for it and what they believe.
They believe that there was a society that existed.
Yes.
Right? And they built beautiful architect buildings. Mm-hmm. We have no idea if they did anything else.
Yeah.
And they
got wiped out in some mud flood. And the reason for that mud flood is either a natural random disaster that just naturally happened, and a bunch of mud covered the planet.
I see your eyes excited for the second one. Or
the second one was a big nuclear war.
Oh, I thought you were saying the government controls weather and they sent a mud flood.
They sent a mud flood.
So
no, it was like a big nuclear war that they got into, the Tartars.
Okay.
So, and that's why, and that side of it is where a lot of people
the Tartars were richer than us, and they were
more technologically advanced than us. They had better architecture than us, and they were a one world government. Like they covered the whole planet. It was an empire that covered the whole planet. And then got in like a civil war or something and killed themselves with a mud flood. And then now the powers that be that are left over want to wipe them out from society. So that's kind of like layer one. Everybody who's a Tartarian truther is like, yeah, that's the story.
Sure.
So let's peel back a layer. So the kind of base layer is that Mongolian empire was way bigger than we thought it was.
Okay.
And it was not like this Viking fringe group that was just going in and was separating all these tribes. It was one organized nation that was a lot bigger than we had initially believed.
Giving them credit for.
Yeah. For this layer, it's less of a worldwide empire, but more of a very large empire. So it's not, they haven't conquered everything, but they've conquered the majority of Europe, the majority of Asia.
Okay.
Australia, parts of Africa, and parts of the United States.
Sure.
That's kind of where that one ends. That's the most if you're gonna believe this, okay.
That it was just big.
It's just a big empire that we've.
Well, but is this at all related to the idea that the Egyptians building the pyramids were more technologically advanced than we were?
Yeah. So a lot of I would say probably layer 2 would say that the pyramids were the same society. It was just an early part of that society, built the pyramids, and then they advanced, and that's when we got this architecture style. But the pyramids were the same.
Sure.
Tartars. So this layer this was a very technologically world-spanning society that dates back thousands of years. For the previous layer, they ended about when that Han Dynasty ended.
Okay.
And so they've been lost for a long time. For this layer, it's a little different. It could be anywhere from they predate our modern civilization.
Yeah.
All the way to, there are people who say that they went right up to 1900 and then we wiped them out.
Are they still
got flooded.
Secretly around?
They're the secret societies. They're the Illuminati.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I haven't seen anyone who says that. But yeah, basically they lasted up until about the end of the 19th century, and then they disappeared. or were destroyed or whatever. And then
Wiped
the world
away.
wars, the world wars were the campaign to vanish.
To really make them
from history.
Okay.
Yeah. But in that idea, it's more than just because like for that previous layer with the Hun Dynasty thing, it wasn't as much they were super technologically advanced. It was a bigger empire than we thought.
Sure.
This layer is they were really technologically advanced. They had technology unlike anything we ever knew. They point to a lot of the stuff like the World's Fair is one that they talk about a lot. And so they point to a lot of things within this World's Fair architecture. Like you can see, like there's all these pillars, and especially on the top of the dome on that far right side there's that big pole. And then you can see it and stuff like this. They have all those pillars. So the idea is that they were using these pillars to like broadcast stuff and like wireless electricity and things like that. Like,
okay.
Like and then here's another one. You got that big pole, and that's sending electricity somewhere.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know.
Or something.
So that's that second layer, was this super technologically advanced civilization. The third layer. So have you ever heard that like that theory that like the Middle Ages didn't exist?
What?
So there's this fringe theory. This has been around way longer than the Tartaria theory. But there's this fringe theory that the Middle Ages didn't happen.
That makes sense.
That's why they're called the Dark Ages. Because for some reason, and I don't really understand the idea, but for some reason, historians were like, it'd be helpful if there was about, 500 or 600 years here that weren't here. And so they just made them up.
Just made them up?
Yeah, they just made up like 500
Oh, to cover up what actually happened.
Yeah, to just be like, hey, we're way further. I don't know. I don't really understand it. But basically, they're like the Dark Ages where nothing really happened in history.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. And we just made up those like 600 years or however long those years were. That theory's been around a long time. There's really no reason to believe it other than not a lot happened during that era in history.
Okay.
And so everyone's like, well, then we just made it up. And so this theory kind of takes this to the extreme. So this is what I call like conspiracy theory meets Bible code.
Oh no,
gone wrong.
Oh, no.
So basically, the idea here is that they bring the Bible into the Tartarian theory, and they look at all of the gospel account and how Jesus talks about how his kingdom is coming soon, and how they take the verse where he says, before any of you pass away, the kingdom will come. And they take that to believe that, well, Jesus died, resurrected, ascended into heaven, and then was gone for a few years, and then came back and established his kingdom on earth, which was Tartaria. And his kingdom had this beautiful art style and was a worldwide kingdom that lasted 1,000 years, because Revelation talks about the millennial reign of Christ. So they say that began immediately after.
And they're saying that's the Middle Ages.
And what they're saying is that all happened, and then the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, is the end of it. Was the end of the millennial reign of Christ. Because in Revelation, they say the millennial reign of Christ ends, the beast is loosened.
I can't believe there's a layer deeper than this. So they're saying that the Dark Ages was a result of then.
Yeah, so that's when in Revelation, when the millennial reign of Christ ends after the 1,000 years, then the beast and Satan is loosed from the pit and let to go be around for a little while until Jesus comes back and recreates heaven and earth. That's the Revelation.
And Jesus
story.
came back after World War II.
No, so he hasn't. And so now
we're still in this
we're in this interim period between the millennial reign of Christ and the final return of Christ.
So he's going to return again.
Yeah. So what they'll say is
that doesn't really flow in some of those songs we sing, though.
It is not 2022, according to this idea. It's really like 1122. And there's 1,000 years that were just made up, starting at the Dark Ages. And so we just kind of...
And they, whoever that is, made it up.
Mm-hmm.
To cover up the... Satan made it. Satan is the they.
Satan is the they in this, because Satan was loose from the pit and allowed to have control over the world.
There's a layer deeper than this. That's all I keep thinking. Okay, so this is still layer 3, right?
I mean, there is a layer 4. Maybe it's not deeper than this.
Okay. I was like, what could be
it's
more
a little
insane?
different. I don't know. But
So Satan is then trying to cover up that Christ reigned for a year.
For 1,000
For 1,000 years, what I mean.
Yeah.
For a millennia.
yeah, and so that's why he went
So
on this
that's
campaign.
Jesus architecture.
Yeah, that Jesus built that.
So the World Fair
Jesus
stuff.
built this.
This is...
This is what Jesus likes. If Jesus could build a big house.
So what I'm saying is that go back to the New York one. Like, that. What year was that built?
1905.
So they're saying that Jesus built that then.
Yeah.
Or that he was reigning during this.
Well, what they're saying is that this is older than 1905. Our records that say was built in 1905 are wrong. And this was built in like 800.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's actually like 1120 now.
So 300 years
This is
ago.
only about 300 years old. But then when Jesus left.
You gotta have some wonky belief to go that direction, but that's okay.
Then when Jesus left, there was the mud flood.
The mud flood.
The mud flood that buried all the buildings a little bit.
Yeah, because this is floor 26 right there.
This is the
There are
building.
24 floors underneath the mud. And then don't even get me started on what happened when the molasses came through, because that was crazy. A 40-foot tall wave of molasses to cover up
Because Satan was like, we got to cover up all of God's architecture.
all of the Tartarians.
Yeah, build some brutalist stuff. Have you heard of TILLN podcast merch? That's right. We have a merch store full of TILLN brand tees, hoodies, mugs, and so much more. We also make new designs for every single episode, but those are only available for a limited time, so get them while they're hot. Text TILLN to 66866 to get your TILLN merch today.
So,
I'm right there with you, man.
Hold on. So they're saying the Middle Ages never happened.
They're saying more than the Middle Ages, about 1,000 years. So it's like
Just
the
so we're
timeline
clear,
goes,
Middle Age, we're talking medieval, right? We're talking like knights and Templar and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean that, but even like the Dark Ages was kind of a subset of the whole Middle Ages, where it was like, I mean, really nothing really happened. Everybody just died and got plagued and all that stuff.
And they had their own little kingdoms.
Yeah. And it was just sad. It was a rough
Sure.
time to exist. They're saying they didn't exist. That's why it was so rough. But then there's a few hundred years on both ends of that.
And so they
that
think
also were made up.
that medieval times is just propaganda.
Yes, exactly.
Like-
They think Satan made that up. They think Satan came and was like, we need to come up with some
I just want to be
lies.
clear that what we're talking about is not medieval the times. I'm talking medieval times, the experience
restaurant
and restaurant where you get to watch knights joust while you eat a turkey leg.
Yeah.
That is propaganda to the Tartarians.
From the devil
That would be so
himself.
insulting to them if you were like, do you want to go to medieval times? And they were like, are you kidding me right now? Have you seen the architecture? Are you serious? After everything I just told you,
You're going to want to go to medieval times.
you want to go to medieval? Sure, I'll go to this made up stuff with you. Look at this. It's all fantasy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So the timeline is about like 30.
And so the layers, they don't agree. None of the Tartarians really agree on all this.
Yeah, because everybody's just kind of making up what they think.
They just
is
got
going on.
ideas that, so the general idea is that there was a society more advanced than us that has existed and then has since then been covered up.
Yeah.
Some people think that it was a government thing, that they were like, we don't know how to build those things
Yeah.
anymore. We're embarrassed.
Yeah. Or it's like the evidence of like some big war
Sure.
that it's like we need to hush whatever happened here. Yeah, no one
Yeah.
can know what happened here.
And then, man.
And then some
And then
people
there's
think
other
it's
people who were like,
Jesus'
it's the devil.
nation.
The devil did it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in that theory, we're
It
in the
got
middle
covered
of,
up by Satan.
Yeah, it's Satan's mud flood. Which is honestly, it's easier for me to buy that a giant flood was started by Satan. A giant flood of mud was started by Satan.
Well, but here's the thing. There's
Then-
got to be people who were like, okay, but the Bible talks about a massive flood happening.
Exactly. Yeah, they take that and they run with it.
I just don't like this stuff.
But yeah, I mean, and there's like tons of examples of these buildings, like the giant Mormon temple in Utah. This is
Yeah.
one of them.
That's one of the Tartarians?
That's one of the Tartarian buildings.
That big spiral one down in Independence that we have?
I don't know about that one.
That was Tartarian
That
for
was
sure.
totally Tartarian.
Yeah, look at that. You think anybody our day
But,
could make that? No.
In Kansas City, Union Station would be a Tartarian building. And one thing that let's descend. Let's go to the next layer of the onion.
I don't like the word descend, but that's okay.
So this theory, and maybe this is more a parallel layer, because the more I think about it after you brought it up, I don't know if any are worse than that Jesus theory.
Yeah.
Are more crazy.
It's a pretty bad one.
It's also crazy. So basically the idea, if you look at this art style, one big piece of this art style is vaulted ceilings. They always have at the minimum 12-foot ceilings, often more like 20, 30-foot ceilings.
Giants.
It was a society of giants. And that's why they want to cover it up, because they don't want anyone to know giants existed.
Yeah.
And so the Tartarians were giants. They were technologically advanced.
We fought so hard to beat the giants. You don't even know what it was like. You don't know what it was like, all right? To be running and then just get shinned and your whole body breaks. All right?
We can't let anyone know.
We fought giants.
Yeah, yeah. You don't know what it was like to be facing the giants. You like that?
I hated that. But then that also could have biblical ground. People would love to take the story of David and be like, well, what about the Philistines? I bet their ceilings were taller than 12 feet.
Yeah, they were Tartarians.
So they're saying that at Union Station.
Yeah, the reason why Union Station's so tall is because it was built by giants, for giants.
So they could stand in that grand hall together and then get on the floor and slide through the doors to get on the trains. Giant halls for normal sized trains, and they get on the tracks and they forearm on a car, and then they're just, you got to plank the whole way down the tracks. Just
it helped them be super fit. They were very physically fit.
Yeah, and they were like, honestly, we could probably walk faster than this train can move because
we're giant.
Because our stride's incredible. You know? Also, I'm glad you have a giant dome so I can walk into your building and
then stand up in this one area in the building.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, the echo's great.
The echo is great, yeah. I'm glad you have this 27-floor thin building so I can stand in here. I can crawl in and just...
That was for our son until he outgrew it. That was for our son.
Another layer deeper is that this is like, it's not just like this society existed alongside humanity. It's this society predated humanity. And so humanity rose and was like, who built this stuff? And so this probably wasn't even human. This was a race that we don't know about that existed before humanity. Say the word. It could be alien.
Yeah.
It could also be, I mean, who knows?
Or reptilian.
Reptilians. It could be
let's call them
Denisovans.
Let's call them Tartarians.
Tartarians? Yeah. Or even like it could be like lizard people. The dinosaurs, they could have been intelligent and built these that's what the Tartarians are saying. This was before humanity. They built these buildings and somehow they're still standing after thousands of years without anybody upkeeping them, but they made it.
That's why the buildings are so tall. So they can...
It's the long neck dinosaurs.
How'd they build it?
The little T-Rex arm with a hammer.
Oh, that's honestly like the whatever those what
the
are they
Triceratops?
Called? Is that what they're called? With the big flaps? They're the bulldozers, right?
Oh,
so
they're
moving stuff
they all
around.
have different like jobs.
And then the meteor buries all their buildings
in mud. The mud flood.
Honestly,
might have been dinosaur architecture.
Dinotech.
Dinotech, yeah. Or even just like the Neanderthals. Maybe they were more intelligent than we thought, and this was their society.
Brick windows. Maybe it was. I don't know. You don't know.
Yeah, no, we know because it would
fancy decor.
It wouldn't have made it. Because here's the thing. Like I think we've talked about this.
Maybe it was the gargoyles.
Geologists, they talk about how if humanity disappeared tomorrow, I think they said it's within 10,000 years, there'd be no record that we ever existed. Everything would just get swallowed by the earth. The only thing that would still be standing that humanity has built would be Mount Rushmore 10,000 years from now without anybody like
You think so?
maintaining it. Without anybody maintaining it, it'd be Mount Rushmore, and even Mount Rushmore would be heavily
decayed
because of the rainwater and stuff like that. So people would probably think it was a natural formation if
the Grand Canyon would still be there.
You saying we built that?
Are you saying we didn't?
So, I mean, if there was a society that predated humanity,
stone structures would still exist?
No, the only reason Mount Rushmore would still be there is because we carved it out of the mountain.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
But not stone structures. Stone structures would collapse. Like Union Station would collapse and get like overgrown with plants and just disappear. And
you think it would collapse eventually?
Yeah, without anybody maintaining that stuff, like the foundation would shift and it would collapse in on itself, and then the earth would swallow it whole.
But the mountain wouldn't. Well, what would happen 10,000 years from now is, you know what that mountain would do? It would turn inward, and those presidents would just be kissing each other. And that'd be really awkward.
What would happen is they would decay, and they'd like resemble faces.
The four kissing men.
And so then, so if some new human society spawned on Earth, they would see that, and they would be like, that kind of looks like people. But they wouldn't be like, oh, somebody built that. They'd be like, it kind of looks like people.
What do you think about the sleeping giant then in Colorado?
Maybe
10,000 years ago.
Could be Tartar.
They strapped a guy to the top of the mountain as
What
punishment.
are the Tartars?
And then they forgot about him.
Like,
he was too high up, so the mud flood took everyone else out.
Yep. But he's just sitting there.
What if the heads on Mount Rushmore were already there? We don't have any like historical proof that those people existed.
Here's the thing about the whole Tartarian theory is they take a couple things that are like, oh, that's a little weird, and then they just ran with it and made a bunch of stuff up. Like there's really no evidence for any of this stuff other than it's just like, oh, that's a little weird. Let me go grab some stuff and make it make sense.
Sure.
So.
Yeah,
that's.
And they're on Reddit.
Yeah, they're on Reddit.
Reddit.com/.
There's a YouTube channel.
Tartarian?
I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to support them. But there's a YouTube channel that has 100,000 subscribers. That's just these theories. And the guy just gets on a webcam and just kind of.
We'll post it in our Discord. If you support us on Patreon, you get access to our Discord, and we'll post some Tartarian links there.
Oh, man, it's a thing. So, anyways, I'm excited for our hate comments on this episode. They're gonna be great.
You know what was really interesting about the Dark Ages?
What
is that? So the concept of medieval times, right?
Yeah.
The restaurant.
Yes.
Is that they had those in a Colosseum. Everyone's just around eating turkey. And they would just have two devils fiddling off in the middle. Hey, thanks for watching Things I Learned Last Night. If you like this video, we have others you can watch, or we have highlights some of our favorite moments from shows. Please make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future episodes. And leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week on Things I Learned Last Night.